Welcome to Fantasy Pants, an actual play RPG podcast.
The network won't like me saying this. Damn it. The Tythos tragedy was the result of nothing natural. It was an act of deliberate terrorism. We don't know anything except that we are hurt and we are scared. But as always, I choose to believe in the power of our luminaries. I will put my faith in the best of all worlds. We must face the storm again.
A beacon of light. That's our role.
Then shine.
What are you doing? What are you talking about?
Think you're so much fucking better than me, don't you?
You are weak.
Take him! Zebulon, you have to remember. You have to remember. Look at the toy. Look at the toy, Zebulon.
It's just the beginning, isn't it?
Monster! Monster!
Can I take your hand? Roll for initiative.
These lights, they don't burn out at night.
Did you crit your pants?
Are you
I
kidding
crit my
me?
pants.
Oh, I can smell
I
it.
crit my pants. Those cozy fucking beds at the pale moonlight.
They're incredible. You
Fuck that place.
Stop it. It's cool.
It's not cool.
You're fucking so dead.
Wait, did you come up with that?
Shut up. I like it.
This is the most wild fucking fight. You say, just shut up. Jason Taylor is now shut.
Shirts are off.
These lights, they'll give us freedom from the dark around us.
Trigger warning. The following episode contains talk about violence, shootings, incarceration, suicide and suicidal ideation, race differences, stereotypes, and other topics that may not be suitable for all listeners. Audience discretion is advised.
Welcome to another episode. Mikey on mute, your mind's implode. He's coming off mute for you. Feel the vibe, it's something new.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Mikey on Mute. As always, I'm your host Mikey, coming off mute to talk about my mental health journey, talk to others about theirs, and get that conversation going. Today, I can't tell you in words how excited I am to have my guest on the show finally. We connected back in November, and we've been talking back and forth. Such a great person. I want to introduce everybody to... I'm going to try to do this like in a big like sports voice. I don't know if I can do it. Let's see if we can do this. Like, representing Detroit, Michigan, the mental health advocate, the former pitcher for Kentucky State University Thoroughbreds. Ladies and gentlemen, the host of Talk with Tay Podcast. Tay, how's it going?
Mikey, man, appreciate you for having me on, man. It's going well, man. I'm glad to be here, and I appreciate the special intro. That was pretty cool, man. So, yeah, how are you, though, man?
Man, I'm doing good. Thank you for asking. Yeah, I wanted to try something out and get a lot. I'm very excited for this, and I might say it a lot, but like this is a conversation I've been waiting for a long time, and so I wanted to bring that energy because I think we both had a little bit rougher starts to our week, and we just need some good energy, some talk, and so like this couldn't come at a better time for us.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, I definitely agree, man. I'm super excited for this. And like you said, we've been connected for a few months. So, and we've been talking throughout those months about, getting something, put together. So it's finally here. So yeah, I'm excited for it, man. Appreciate you again.
Yeah, as always. I appreciate you being here, being on the show. I appreciate like you just reach out, and your conversations with me are so nice to have those check-ins. It's always honest, raw, and real. And for anyone that's listening that hasn't checked out Talk with Tay Podcast, that's what it is. It's honest, raw, real. These are some heavy conversations that not everyone is having, especially as men. And so that's what first really attracted me to your page and your podcast, was seeing another person, another man talking about these feelings. And I just want everyone here to understand that just because it's raw and heavy doesn't mean it's scary or anything like that. So I'm trying to bring more of the listeners in here And I want to talk a little bit more about Talk with Tay. So if you had to give us like a small glimpse into what Talk with Tay podcast is about, why don't you tell everybody what's going on with you?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you. Yeah. Talk with Tay Podcast is a podcast centered around conversations dealing with grief experiences and mental health. This all started from me really just battling with mental health and depression and also grieving my entire life. But when my mother passed away, that's when it's like life just, took control over me and got the best of me for real. I was in probably the darkest place I've ever been in my life when that happened, just being real transparent. And I went mute for about a year or two, man. Like I was in school and doing everything and all of that stuff, but I was like, I had nothing to say to the world. I was pretty much hibernating. And then one day I got real tired of holding everything in and just dealing with certain relationships and people who didn't understand me. So one day I was just like, man, I want to just start a podcast. You know what I mean? And I really just did it one day, just didn't know nothing about it or anything. And I used my name. I was just like, Talk with Tay. Okay. You know what I mean? Just kind of like ran with it. And yeah, man, we're here now. And it's been a journey for sure. Interesting one, a lot of emotions behind building the platform and having these conversations. It takes a lot to open up about these things. Like you just said, it's not the most common thing to discuss amongst men for real. But yeah, it's just, that's where it all started from, really the death of my mother and just needing to talk, man. And I just felt like if I could, I'll just talk to myself. I don't care if anyone watches it. You know what I mean? So that's really where it comes from.
Yeah, and major respect on that, because I feel all these similarities. Like I started because I wanted to tell my story a lot for everybody else, but a lot for me too, because I have memory lapse, I have gaps, which happens a lot with like different mental illness. You start to have these memory lapse. And so I thought if I tell my story, maybe I could fill in some of my own blanks. That was a big part of it. But yeah, grieving is such a hard process to talk about in general. Everybody grieves differently. And it was so refreshing. Like when I was looking at, I'm going to start this podcast. I'm going to try to reach out to other people and network and stuff like that. And I don't want it to sound odd, but I just felt like, okay, here's another person. I lost my mom in 2016, and I believe it was 2021. So similar thing there, feeling that, that all those emotions that you couldn't let out and that you couldn't process, it spoke deeply to me. And so selfishly, that's why I hit that follow button as fast as I could. But it was just, I was so happy to see it, and not happy that we've had to go through some shit, but like happy to see that other people are having these conversations. And so thanks for telling us like what's going on with the podcast, how it started and everything like that. I know that when my mom passed, for me, it was the turning point as far as learning some really unhealthy coping behaviors and mechanisms. I talk about like a file cabinet, everything got shoved back. I had to make sure everyone else was good. I was not going to process my emotions. I was not going to be vulnerable. Did you experience issues with vulnerability when your mom passed, or what was kind of the state of mind, how your path took you from there?
Yeah, man. First, just want to, I've told you this before, but sorry for your loss as well, man. I know how you feel. Yeah, I would definitely say 1,000%. You know what I mean? I've always had issues with vulnerability throughout my life. So when that happened, it was just like, oh no, like I'm never going to be able to talk to people now. Like I'm never going to be able to open up. I'm never going to be able to express how I feel, because I tried to express, things centered around my mental health state when my mother was sick, when she was ill throughout my life, right? And it would always feel awkward talking to people about it. You know what I mean? It was just never, it's like almost no one ever understood. And I always, kind of be, came out to be like the awkward person, I would say, what I mean? Just talking about these things. So when I seen people's reaction to it, it made me just be like, you know what, fuck it. I'm not going to say nothing ever. Like, just leave me alone type of thing. You know what I mean? So when it happened, I was like, oh man, like this, I knew it wasn't going to be good for me because at the time I was dating someone. Me and my family are not seeing eye to eye. A lot of things going on with my mother's, leading up to her death. So it was just like, okay, this isn't going to be a good process for me at all. So again, I shut down and, people just faded away from me, like, just naturally type of thing. So yeah.
It is so tough when we are taught that, expressing these things are really not what we're supposed to do. And it gets reinforced when we try to open up to certain people and we get kind of like the side eye. They're not sure how to deal with it. They get uncomfortable, which makes us uncomfortable and not want to talk about it anymore. And so
Yeah.
I get that it's not easy. Like when everything was going on, I had mom passed in 2016. I went through my separation divorce 2018, 2019, and I couldn't talk about it. And it took a long time for me to realize how much I struggle with vulnerability. And now it's still there. The ironic thing is I can be vulnerable here on the podcast with people on the internet I've never met and all that stuff. But my close relationships with my wife, with my kids, it's really hard for me to be vulnerable. And so that's something I'm constantly working on with my therapist. And just between vulnerability and self-compassion are really my two big struggles right now. And so I get it. Like I don't want any of us to go through those situations where we try to open up to somebody and we get a bad response or negative response. Unfortunately, that shit happens though. And so if anyone is listening to that, I'm just going to say, like, if you open up to somebody and you get a negative response, try somebody else, maybe just reevaluate, try somebody else, because maybe they just are not good in their own place. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't talk about it. Again, easier for me to say it than other people to do, but that's my little TED talk here in this part of the conversations. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. And it's like, I think sometimes I've never been upset at people for not understanding, right, what that feels like, or just maybe not having the right thing to say. And sometimes I don't even look for people to say anything. Sometimes I just need to let it out. I need you to be a sponge. But the way people go about, the conversations and the things that you tell them, that's the part that I always have an issue with, because there's certain things that you just, you don't have to say, and you don't have to treat people a certain way because they're opening up. So like, that was always my thing with it. Like, I don't want anyone to feel this, or I don't expect anyone to feel this, because most people, that you interact with in life and that you bump into, maybe haven't lost a parent or lost anyone that close to them. So they don't really know how it feels, but how you treat that person is definitely the factor of it all to me. So yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I hear you on sometimes you just need to be heard. And I think a lot of us jump to that superhero complex of like, let me fix it for you or give you advice. And sometimes you just need to be heard. But I want to just kind of bounce off what you said and say, yeah, if someone does open up to you, you don't have to walk on eggshells. We're not fragile like that we're going to break. I would want to be treated the same way that you treat me now, even after I talk about it. Treat with respect. But if you usually joke with me and give me shit, keep joking with me and giving me shit. Maybe not about the topic immediately after, but whatever might work. But yeah, I don't want people to have to change who they are or how they treat me just because I want to open up to somebody. And I think that's hard for people to just exist there and keep being there. Cause I know I want to fix everybody's problems. I want to make sure everyone around me is good. And that's something that I have to deal with.
True. Yeah. I'm the same way. So I definitely know how you feel.
Like I said, I know that we both talk a lot about mental health and mental health advocacy. It's a huge thing for me, for you. It comes out in volumes. And when you talk, there's raw emotion. Like I can feel it. We can see it. And may I say for anybody listening, when you go over and check out Tay's stuff in high quality video stuff, man, your stuff is sharp. Like it is good. Like I love watching it, but you can see it. You are feeling that your eyes tear up. You have cried multiple times on the podcast. And I think that speaks huge volumes. So I just want to take a minute And thank you for being vulnerable with us. Thank you for being real, because those are the types of conversations I need to hear, I need to have. So just a momentary thank you. I really appreciate you for being vulnerable and sharing your story.
Yeah, man, absolutely, man. Thank you, man. I appreciate those words, man. That was a side that honestly, at first, there was fear there of showing that side, because everyone knows me as just a person just to get through shit. You know what I mean? So even some of the closest people really didn't know some of those things that I was battling with. So that was like, man, it's a bittersweet feeling now, but that was super scary at first, because I was just like, yeah, I'm doing this for myself, but other people are going to see it. You know what I mean? Like, so that you never know who's watching. You know what I mean? I have a lot of younger family members, nephews and stuff, and it's hard having those conversations with people. And then when they actually see that you've been going through these things, it changes a lot. So that was, yeah, I'm always super raw and just transparent with everything that I record. You know, sometimes I don't even plan record. It's like, we'll get into that later, but like, I just pop it open and just start talking about what's bothering me that day, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. And it's, like I said, it comes out real and it's appreciated. So I like to pick brains about other people, especially that talk about mental health. I guess, what are some things that you think people in general, or men specifically, what are they missing the mark when they're going through their healing journeys, or talking about mental health, or not talking about? I guess, what is like the most misunderstood thing with mental health when it comes to being a man or being a human being? What do you feel is misunderstood throughout society?
Oh man, that's a really good question.
I know I threw a hot one at you.
To me, I think now at this point in life, I think, you know, the misconception, you know, the one that's like highlighting everything is the facade of social media when it comes to mental health, because we only talk about it, you know, when it's someone of a certain stature, right? You see people praise and do all this thing when someone who's on your favorite TV show or whatever, right, comes out and talks about it, but we're not even talking about it. We're not checking on our friends. We're watching people close to us go through it. So I think it's just a misconception that it's like, it's supposed to be something that's like a myth. You know what I mean? Like, again, we see it on social media from certain people. So we just think, oh, he's just talking about his feelings or his mental health, but they don't even understand that it's really a real thing. And you're dealing with some things too, but ignoring it is where we kind of go wrong. So it kind of goes hand in hand with just thinking that it's just a myth and it's only for, you know, just kind of a clout thing, I would say personally. But yeah, I think it kind of boils down to that and other things, but that's kind of like probably the hierarchy, I would say.
Yeah, I would have to definitely agree with that. I think it comes down to a lot of things where you can share whatever you want, you can repost, you can all that add to your story. That's great, but unless you are acting it out in your life, it's not really doing much. And then you're just doing it to, like you said, get some clout or show, you know, try to get followers or something like that. I see, you know, you see it like when businesses change their logos when it comes to Pride Month, or when it gets to an awareness for cancer, you know, you see these things pop up, and that's great. I'm glad that there's awareness, but these are the same people that won't have those conversations with you. So if I see somebody on social media that shared, you know, hey, support your friends with mental health, and then I reach out to them one day and they don't respond, or they, you know, give me that weird reaction or negative, well, then I just know you're full of shit kind of with it. I reached out to you, one, because you're a friend, and two, because I saw you openly talking about it. Well, I thought you were openly talking about it, but yeah, it is definitely one of those things that you don't think is real until, yeah, you see a sports figure or TV actor or something like that start to talk about it. And it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know this existed. Like, yeah, you did. Like, this is shit that you deal with every day. Like, so yeah, I hear you on that myth. It's frustrating. So I enjoy seeing everyone share everything. I hope deep down that they're doing that in real life too, that they would have that conversation. I just unfortunately think that there's a lot of people that share things that maybe they wouldn't discuss in real life too, or support in real life.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree. Like you say, it's again, they don't understand that it's real until it happens to them. You know what I mean? Then that's when it comes full circle, and now they can have an understanding. But if you just keep, just taking it for a joke, that, that's where we're gonna be, just keep being left behind when it becomes a thing that's normalized. It's talking about it and actually addressing it. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I get that. I know that growing up for me, it was very, learned a lot of toxic masculinity traits when it came to mental health. You don't talk about it, you drink, you handle it with whatever else you can. And so I always like to get perspective because I come from one background and a lot of people come from different backgrounds. And so growing up, was there any discussion within your household with mental health? Do you talk about it with friends or at school? I want to get an understanding, like growing up, was this part of your life or was it something that you avoided completely?
Yeah, for me growing up, it was no talk discussion about mental health or feelings. And now that I'm, an adult, right, and I'm doing this podcast about mental health and now I'm actually addressing these things, I noticed that we all dealt with it and we just dealt with the display of, the actions behind it, the anger, the drugs, just the irate, just snapping on people, whatever it was, violence, whatever it was people were doing to just take out their anger. I'm able to see now that, okay, there was a lot of shit going on and that was the result of mental illness, like literally. So yeah, it was no discussion ever. Like in me growing up, in a poverty area, public schools, you go to schools and, you tell your teachers, I'm not feeling the best. There's a lot going on at home. You know what I mean? And then you get in trouble for going to school and saying that. So now you really can't talk about things. So it was just like, no, if you express feelings, like, just shut up. You know what I mean? Like, shut that. Like, we ain't want to hear that. Like, quit crying, toughen up and all of that shit. And sometimes it's necessary. Maybe if you fall or something and you playing sports, yeah, that's cool, whatever. But all the time, like, nah, it wasn't cool to me. So, nah, I didn't have any. That was non-existent in my childhood.
Yeah, and I think when I was growing up, anytime my friends and I discussed mental health, it was always in a very negative way. I was joking about, someone's in a straitjacket. This is our idea of what mental health is. You're in a straitjacket, you're hospitalized, you're off your rocker, etc. I don't think we ever talked about like everyday struggles, anxiety, depression. It was always like this extreme negative. And so I had this idea, this connotation from youth that mental health, like that's bad. And so once I started feeling emotions that kind of aligned with that, I immediately was like, I don't want anyone to know that. So, you put on a mask, you put on a facade, you don't talk about it. It's really interesting when you talk about going to school and talking about that because these are supposed to be safe spaces for us, going to school to talk to teachers and counselors and coaches and everything like that. And so, yeah, you get that where you try to express it, it gets back to your parents and then you get in trouble for it. And you're like, well, yeah, so that it makes sense that you learned very quickly. I can't share here. So I really hope, I see some good examples nowadays. I don't know if it's perfect, but I see better examples. So I'm hoping that those spaces are more helpful and more accepting for people and kids now. Like you said, in sports, there are going to be times where it's like, okay, yeah, you're playing football, you got tackled. That might have hurt, but you need to, take your minute, get up and let's go. Like,
yeah.
But there are other times where if a kid comes to a coach and says, coach, like I'm really dealing with some hard stuff right now, like I would hope that coach has some acceptance and either can, tell them that they have the capacity to talk to them or recommend them to somebody else. I don't want anyone to feel like they're in trouble for expressing that anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I feel like that's what it should be. You know what I mean? Like, especially like in a setting like that, like in athletics, for example, like if somebody comes to you, as a coach, if a player comes to you, don't automatically rule it out as some shit that's soft or, just something that's non-irrelevant or has to do with, the mental toughness of the sports side. Cause your mental affects, everything when it comes to like you say, those certain spaces and what you do, work, whatever it is. So I feel like it should just be a normal thing to be like, to have someone to talk to in that space. But unfortunately, not really. Like, I'm not saying just, exclude, doing your job. That's not what I'm saying. But like, if someone comes to you and says, hey, I'm dealing with this shit right now. This shit is bothering me. All right, look, cool. Let's talk about it. Instead of, nah, you soft, like you not, ain't nothing wrong with you, like type of thing. And that's where we go wrong a lot. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's spot on, absolutely spot on. And as we're on the sports topic here, I do want to kind of pick your brain a little bit more as far as like when you were playing baseball and everything. I know that you had to like go back and play and study, especially like it was really hard after losing your mom. But did you have camaraderie from your teammates? I know you had to mask a lot and be quiet with it. Did you notice any kind of talk about it, like in a locker room with high school, college, anything like that?
Man, to be honest with you, yeah, I definitely had support from my teammates and stuff like that. But I was dealing with these things my entire career while in school and playing ball. Like, I was never able to have a clarity when playing the sport. And that's a lot of the reasons why I struggled so much with just the performance side, right? Checked everything off the box, physicality, tools, whatever it is, right? But I could not perform because up here, I'm worried about my mom being sick. I'm worried about my brother being in jail. All of these, my nephews maybe getting taken away from CPS. You know what I mean? So it's like all of these things all the time. And I'm just like, damn, I can't even enjoy it. But for the most part, I did. People saw me, but a good chunk of that time, they didn't really understand what I was going through until it was when I lost my mom. And they were still looking at me from afar like, damn, he's showing up every day. Like, we don't even, like, how are we supposed to even talk to him? You know what I mean? They see this. They see me present, going to class, going to practice, and games, still being myself. But then it's that time where they looking for me and I just disappear. You know what I mean? Now they like, damn, like, how's he even doing this shit? So it wasn't discussed. It was kind of like, from afar, because that's real touchy, man. You never really understand. You never really understand if you're looking at someone going through that and you're around them all the time and they're not showing, how it's affected them, right? So that can be confusing, and most people may not know how to approach it or deal with that. Because again, I was on a team where maybe 3 people total, including me, lost someone close to them. And those other 2 people, that I'm still close with all of them, but they were grandparents of those people. So everybody on the team has parents, and they looking at me like what? Like, what you mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, not literally, but like they're looking at me and I'm looking at them. That's really how I can explain it. You know what I mean? So it was very sensitive, very fragile. For sure. But I mean, for the most part, I definitely had support, and I don't think I could have gotten through it without, my last year, especially, my last year teammates. I don't think I would have gotten through it without them. Just letting me, be. Because there would be times I would leave practice without saying shit. You know what I mean? I just walk off the field. We on the bus on the road. I go fucking walk down the road somewhere and they come looking for me. You know what I mean? We getting some food. I'm the last one to leave. Everybody looking for me again. So it's things like that where I didn't get judged for that because of the environment that I was in. I had a good coach who cared about his players, and I just had good teammates, but it was still hard to be around them, for real.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you did have that support, even if it was hard for them to recognize what was going on. You can't explain to people, as you've said multiple times, and you understand this. People can't get what it's like to lose somebody close to you unless you have gone through that. You could read books, listen to podcasts, watch movies. You can do all of that, and it's great to try to show interest and support somebody, but until you've been there, it's just not, I don't think it's in our capacity to be able to understand that. And it's really tough to talk to people about things that they can't understand. It's not their fault. Like, I don't want to fault anybody for having parents surviving. Like, that's not my thing, but I didn't know how to talk to people because with my mom passing, she got diagnosed with brain cancer in time, and they gave her 6 months at that point. They were like, that's probably our best bet Mom fought for 7 years, like stubborn as hell in the best way. Loved it. But I remember getting the call that, hey, it's probably going to be time pretty soon. And physically watching mom take her last breath was something I was not prepared for. I've never thought I'd watch somebody in real life pass away. I've seen it in movies and all that stuff, but you don't think about it. And it's one of those things that, yeah, I mean, I was filled with so many emotions that I didn't know how to process that. The only thing I could do was go to work. I could keep doing what I knew on autopilot, kind of like you going, well, so how is he still showing up to practice and everything? I knew how to work. I knew how to get through each day. I might have been checked out up here, but I knew how to get through. And yeah, I don't think people understood how I would be able to do normal everyday things. Like, how did you do that when your mom just passed? Like, if I'm not on autopilot and doing this, I don't know what's going to happen. And I don't want to be alone with my thoughts right now. And it scared me as far as the unknown. And so I think for me, it was, I'm comfortable in my schedule with work and everything like that. I know how to keep going forward like that. And it only made sense to do that instead of facing those emotions. And it wound up being something I struggle with later because I held off from processing those for so long that I learned how to not feel. And that's not a good thing either. But I get what you're saying as far as like, sometimes you just have to, you keep going and there's no reasonable logic behind it. So it's really hard for other people to understand, but I do feel that on a level.
Yeah, man, you just said something that made me realize like about not being prepared, to see someone take their last breath. And that was like you said, you see it in movies and you sometimes you think about it like, hey, I know my mom's sick when, anything can happen type of thing. But when you actually see it, it's like, wow, like life can really happen like that. I had to watch my mom take her last breath on FaceTime, and that's probably the worst. I can't explain that, but that was gut wrenching. It's almost like I died with her right there. You know what I mean? Like that's a crazy feeling to experience, man. And when I try to tell people that, again, I get the backlash and I'm like, I'm never talking about this. You know what I mean? So it's always, just not being prepared for those things, man. Life really comes at you fast, and it's just like, wow, like this can really happen. You know what I mean?
It was something that I didn't know. Like I said, we were given the idea that 6 months was going to happen. We had 7 years. So technically we had, 6.5 years to prepare that it could happen at any point, but there's still no way to get ready for that or anything like that. You can try to understand the reality of the situation, but until it happens, you're not going to be able to get it. And that moment changes you forever. I mean, the world, it's cliche, but the world stops and everything just doesn't make sense. And I was filled with so many different emotions. And that made me realize at that time that I have never really sat down and been vulnerable and accepted emotions. So it scared the hell out of me. I was having so many different emotions that I was just scared as fuck. I didn't know what to do. And I just had to shut the rest of the world off. And it's scary. And that's why I learned to be mute about it, because if I didn't process it, my therapist likes to say all the time, by underfeeling, I was causing overthinking. So I need to reverse that and underthink a little bit more and overfeel. But yeah, for the longest time, like underfeeling is how I got through everything. That just made sense. And it took a long time for me to process that grief is not something you do at one time. It's not like, somebody passes, you grieve it, and it's all good then. I think learning that it's a linear process, like that path never stops, is hard, because there are going to be days where, you're feeling like you're going up, and then something will pop up and remind me of her, or something just pops in my head in a memory and I'll lose it. And I feel like I go down. And so giving myself that self-compassion is really hard to understand that it's not going to just like go away one day. Do you struggle at all with like, I shouldn't be still upset about this, or I still shouldn't be crying about it? Anything like that ever creep into your head?
Yeah, man, all the time. You know what I mean? And I'm so traumatized from, past people that I've dealt with who made me feel like I wasn't supposed to feel those emotions. So that made it 100 times worse because now I can't even sit here and have a moment, be like, damn, I miss my mom. That's negative to other people. You know what I mean? So I was walking on eggshells with anybody in my life because I'm like, damn, I'm not supposed to miss, like, what are y'all talking about? Like, this shit don't feel good at all. Like, y'all making me feel bad. For a long time, for a while, I was like always thinking like, okay, maybe I should be a little better here and there. Maybe I should do, until I realized that, yeah, you're going to be better certain moments. You're going to have your ups. You can be doing everything, achieving everything that you want, but you're still going to have the lows no matter how successful or how long life continues to go and how long it's been. So once I figured that out, I was just like, fuck it. You know what I mean? Like I told you earlier, this week has been rough.
Yeah.
Bruh, like rough. Like I don't know where I am right now, like type of thing. You know what I mean? So, but I'm allowing myself to be like, okay, that's cool. You know, feel it however you need to feel. And that's something I didn't do early on until honestly a few months ago. So I'm glad that I'm able to, you know, realize that and know that it's okay. And this is, like you say, it's not linear. So it's a lifetime, man. Like I gotta prepare myself to be down, up, down, up, down, up, however it comes. So that's kind of, you know, that's kind of how I take away that.
Yeah, I feel you. I have this bad habit of wanting to like prepare and like want to come up with every outcome that can happen going forward. I do it with conversations. I've even realized like how do I, like, if this person says this, how do I say it in a way, like what's my response going to be so they don't think worse of me or anything like that. And at one point my therapist just said like, you need to deal with what if and not like try to come up with all the outcomes, but if something goes wrong, just sitting in that uncomfortable, like you didn't plan for this, you don't have a way out, and just sit with it. That sounded terrifying to me to just like let it happen. But man, it is a game changer when you're able to kind of just feel emotions. And it was weird for me as like a first time feeling of emotions at whatever, 30 something for myself. And it's just like, was I supposed to be doing this all along? And that led to a lot of those should statements, which will drive you crazy. I deal with them all the time. My wife likes to try to catch me when she can. And hey, don't say should, it's could and all that stuff. I think those should statements are just drilled into us. And for me, it was the toxic masculinity and what was going to be as successful as a man. I was always told, status and money and having the newest things. If you're able to sleep with so many girls, if you're able to get this job and all that, it was all about standards that you had to achieve in order to be a successful man. And I look at it now and it's like, if I told my 16-year-old self, like, hey man, you're going to be working at a job that probably doesn't impress your parents and you're going to like musicals and you're going to be talking about mental health and you're going to, you take your car somewhere, you get the oil change, you don't do it yourself. I'd probably look at me and like stare off and think that guy's weird. Like that's not what's supposed to happen. And so it's really tough with those should statements. And I know I battle with them every day. I try to root cause them. And I think too much because my therapist, like, sometimes you don't need to understand why, you just understand how we can change it going forward. And that was a big one for me.
Yeah, that's a very valid point. I don't know. I didn't, like you say, life takes its turn. And if I was talking to my 16-year-old self, I definitely would not think I would be here. And not that being here is a bad thing, but like me knowing that my mom wouldn't be here 10 years later, like that's not a long time to me. Like, and now I'm talking about mental health things that bothered me my entire life that I probably never thought I would be able to address and just stand in, you know what I mean? And I identify myself with a lot of these emotions. Like, I never thought that would be life for me. You know what I mean? I thought I would continue to do things that make me happy, successful, whatever it is, right? But I never thought I would get to that point. And it's funny how things like this will literally make you, will sit you down and you become the things that you never thought that you could do. So it's like, man, it's kind of full circle. Sometimes it's hard to understand. Like you said, your therapist told you, you're not supposed to understand them, understand those things. You just, and that's where I'm at now. I'm like, wow, like, okay, like, what am I supposed to get from this? So yeah.
It's a tough lesson. I'm glad that he brought it up for me because it's something I needed, but yeah, it's something that we don't think about very often. So I like those thought-provoking things. My brain loves being a problem solver, so it loves trying to figure things out.
Wow.
Other than just solving problems, it also loves perspective. And I think part of that comes from not only having these conversations, but also trying to grow as people and understand more perspective. And I like to kind of just, reach out, and I've been blunt with people before. Like, hopefully this isn't too blunt for anyone listening. For me, it's not, but I'm just a white guy from Wisconsin. Like, I only have so many experiences. I can't understand other people's lives unless I ask them about it and they tell me and they talk to me and all that stuff. Do you think, like, just as a personal question, let me know if you don't want to answer, that's cool too, but do you think that there is a major difference between how white men and black men deal with mental health?
I used to think that there was a difference until I got in the world, right? I come from a place where I grew up around all black people. Barely saw a white person. I didn't play baseball as a kid. I only played football and basketball. So when I started playing baseball, that's when I started to be around, a very diverse population. But I used to think that it was a big difference, but now it's all the same shit, man. We just in different circumstances, in different households, different financial status, whatever it is, right? It's all the same shit, bro. Like, there's no difference to me. There's really no difference to me. Yeah.
And that's how I see it too. I know that there are just so many things on the world. I think when it comes to perspective, we are scared of that unknown. And when we don't know things, we assume things. And so it's really interesting. Like, I talked a little bit to Sarah Fox the other day for her show, Rough Edges podcast, and talked about, because she always had this perspective that it seemed like black women had a lot of mental health or like things put on their shoulders, expectations and all of that. And I thought that was really interesting as far as, I know that both men and women can go through it and all that stuff, but it really intrigued me because, like, I grew up in a society that expected men to kind of take care of everything in the household, and for men to cover all the bases. You didn't show emotion because you were busy working, and all that stuff. So that really opened up my eyes to, oh man, maybe like there's a whole other part of the world that puts a lot of these pressures on women too. And so that was a nice perspective. So I appreciate the honest answer. Like I said, part of me talking, I don't want to just have the same conversation over and over. I think it's great that we're talking about mental health, but also I do want to push some boundaries and understand, like, hey, like, if I don't ask, I'm never going to know. And I don't want to live life assumption wise.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely appreciate you asking, man. Cause like I said before, I used to be very simple-minded when it came to, different lifestyles of, people when it comes to, between white and black people. Right. But it's all the same. It's just a different experience. Like, literally, like, some people, like, people die, people don't feel loved, people feel burnt out. And I come from a place too where the men are expected to shut up and just pay for everything, provide, right? Provide and protect, mainly provide. Nobody gives a fuck about the protection because they're doing so much. There's no way they can do that. So that's another story. But yeah, I just feel like it's really all the same. And I do feel like, though, black people don't address it as soon as white people are able to. I would say that, though. And you can chime in and let me know how you feel about that. But yeah, I feel like that's a different perspective on that.
Yeah, I definitely think it has to do with what area you live in, how society around you is interacting, all that stuff. I live in Northeast Wisconsin, 30 minutes from Lambeau Field. So I am not in the most diverse part of the country. And so when I went to partial hospitalization, or when I went to inpatient, it's all white people. Like, that's all I ever dealt with as far as counselors or people going through mental health struggles. And so I guess in my head, there is a little bit of a bias. Like, oh yeah, then that makes sense that white people talk about it more. Honestly, though, that's more of a skewed thing just because that's my experience. And so I need to be a little bit more understanding that, like, yeah, well, it very well could be that they come to terms with talking about mental health sooner, or it could just be that's how it is around here. I think it's a very interesting question. I appreciate you asking because it's given me the idea to like process and think and branch out. I really hope anyone that's dealing with things like, it doesn't matter just because we're talking about this. You can be white, black, any color, any gender, anything you are. Please just talk to somebody about your mental health. It's so important. But I love gaining perspective in these real honest conversations. And so I think that is pretty spot on. Growing up, I mean, to be honest, growing up, if I saw a black person, I was probably watching a movie or watching TV. Like, it was not around very much. And so, yeah, you get these really messed up ideas that carry over. Just like we have toxic masculinity, we have toxic ideas about people that are different than us. And it's so crazy because it's so simple. At the end of the day, like you said, we both deal with the same kind of shit and just different experiences with it. So why would we think there's a difference? But I think it's just part of the world for the longest time what told us that there had to be a difference. And so that's really hard for all of us to unlearn. And so I think there are going to be white parents that make it hard for people to talk about mental health later on in life. There are going to be black parents that do the same, and vice versa. There are going to be parents on both sides that are going to make it easier. I really hope that there isn't as much, but I do think that I live in the real world. I understand that people are maybe not given the same opportunities. If you phone up a job interview and I say, hey, I got Mike on here and I got Tay on here, whose job, perfect, the same resume, whose job is it going to get? I live in the real world, and unfortunately, they're probably going to pick up my phone first. And
Absolutely.
so I hope with mental health care that that's not the case, but I really just want to put out there into the universe that it could be a very real thing. I don't know if you've ever experienced that it's harder for a black man or woman to get mental health help or healthcare in general. It's a worry that I have deep inside of me.
Yeah, no, I definitely, at this point, I don't even know if I would say it's harder. Like, I don't even, like, just being able to talk about this now and just see the world from a different lens. I can't say I don't think I have an answer right now. I think I need to come back because it's like, is it harder? Because like you literally can just pick up the phone and search and go find it, right? You know what I mean? And it's always been accessible. But what was the thing that was stopping us from, using the resource? So that's where my mind is now, like, because it's always been there. Like, we went to regular medical doctors for whatever. We went to hospitals. So, where is the gap? You know what I mean? So now I look at it a little different. I just think like, okay, all black people think, oh no, we need to stay away from that. That's for them other people. You know what I mean? That type of like just ignorant mindset of it, I feel like that's what's held us back for so long. So yeah.
And I think it's something that we need to address. Like, obviously there are so many different sides. And when you start talking about things like this, there's a lot of different perspectives. People deal with it differently, but it's hard when you're watching like a comedy show or something like that. And they joke that, maybe if there was a movie theater shooting, it was probably a white person. If there was a robbery at this store, it was probably a black person. And everyone laughs and all that stuff and all that. And well, yeah, I get that, the majority is funny and all that. But I think we also need to make sure we don't keep reinforcing the wrong ideas with those jokes and everything. And it can be really, really tough. But like I said, I appreciate you being honest with me and raw. And I know that it's not a subject everyone wants to talk about, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. No problem. Yeah, like I told you, outside of, this episode or whatever, I'm always down for honest and just raw, just conversations, man, because you have to continue to learn about yourself and about the world as it goes on. So, I mean, why not? If it's on your mind, why not try to, speak on it? So, yeah, no problem, bro.
I always like to ask people that speak openly and are big advocates for mental health, like, what was the big turning point that you knew you like had to or wanted to talk about something? Because like for me, I went to inpatient, and that was from when I thought that it was, I didn't need to be at this world anymore. And that was probably like a starting point of me going into my journey, but I didn't want to talk about it at that point until it got later on in life when I realized that doing the same thing over and over wasn't getting me anywhere. I was going to a therapist just long enough to bitch about all my problems. And then as soon as it got to the point that I had to do something about it, I would quit it. I'd go find a different therapist, and I just went in the circle. So I think it was just like this moment that said, like, you're doing the same shit over and over and it's not working. So that was kind of my moment to turn and go, okay, well, I need to process in a different way. And that included talking more openly about it. Was there a specific moment or like a series of events for you that was like, okay, this, I can't keep going on unless I take this on in a different way?
Yeah, definitely. It was a couple events that kind of, just prolonged over time. When I was grieving early on in those stages, I was eating a lot, right? I would just eat to eat, to fulfill, whatever emotions that was going on. If I felt sad, I was going to eat some shit and just eat the entire day and go to sleep, right? So I picked up a lot of noticeably weight for, my stature, right? I was gaining a lot of weight quickly, and then people would kind of make a mockery of it. You know what I mean? Like in a joking way when they see me going through this shit and trying to make it thinking I'm going to laugh at it. And I'm like, okay, one time it's cool. And then you continue to go around people. And some of these people were some of the family members that I was trying to deal with at the time. So we ignore what's really going on, and you're trying to make a joke of this, and it's not funny. So that led me to almost, committing suicide. So I was like, damn, like people just really gonna watch me? You just gonna make fun of me gaining weight? Like when I'm eating because I'm sad. You know what I mean? I don't have nothing else to do. I was going to the gym, I was working, I was doing everything, but I would just eat unnecessary food throughout the whole day just to cope with it. So when I seen that people didn't really give a fuck, I was like, okay, cool. Like, and then it got deeper, and I was like, man, you know what? I'm about to, I can't be here any longer. You know what I mean? And I sat with that for so long. And then as time went on, I was just like, man, I'm gonna just fucking talk about it. Like, fuck everybody. Fuck how y'all feel. Fuck how y'all feel. Whatever. And I'm gonna say some things that may hurt somebody's feelings, or say some things that people may not want to hear, but I need to talk. And that was kind of like, that's kind of where it all stemmed for me.
Yeah. And I think that's huge. And when you can reach a point to do that, it's tremendous, because we're raised to be such people pleasers. I talk to my kids all the time about like wanting to do things just because their friends are doing it. And I think we live in a world where we want to be accepted, we want to be loved, we want to be cared for. And we will do anything, or we won't do things just to please other people. And so when you're able to be comfortable enough to go, you know what, fuck everybody, I need to do this for me, it's life changing. So like big props to you for reaching that point. It's hard because, at least for me, I've lost people as far as friendships. They've left, and it's one of those things that I thought I had some major loss. Like I was friends with them for so long, but also they were a part of me that was not accepting of what I needed, and they wouldn't grow with me. And so it might be tough to have those like boundary situations. And so, but like I said, just major props for being able to recognize that on your side.
Yeah, man, absolutely. That was a scary time, man, because it took so long for me to really, get to the point where I'm like, I'm just talk about it. I didn't think I would make it to that point. So I didn't even think I would live to see it, if I'm being honest with you. So that was like a fresh breath, like, damn, okay, now this is helpful. I still deal with it. I still have my moments. It's still hard. You know what I mean? But now that I can just simply just talk about it, something that I never wanted to do ever in life was talk about problems. I'm not mad at the way it turned out. And to be able to meet people like you and other people across the world in the podcast world and mental health advocate field, it's amazing to me, like how it can, flip the switch like that and just be something that's helpful to you and everyone that's seeing what you're doing, who's trying to do the same thing. So yeah.
Yeah, that podcast community, like that has given me such a great feeling of community and surrounding support. It's been amazing. I've talked to people from the US, from Australia, from Canada. I have conversations like with this guy in Germany, and it's like we all are talking the same thing because we all care about what's going on in the world and how can we be better. And
Yeah.
it's so cool to see. I mean, like I'm constantly sharing out whatever I'm listening to at that moment. Seeing other people share my stuff is like, that's really rewarding to me. I love seeing it. I get the little notification on my Instagram, Talk with Tay has shared your post, and I'm like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a good feeling. And man, I can't thank you enough for being a part of that community and being part of that brotherhood and a new friend to me. So again, like I love that. Are you getting a similar positive amount of community and support in your podcast space?
Yeah, I am, man. And it's like, it's overwhelming sometimes because again, you never knew that it was people going through the same experiences as you. It's some of these things are deep and dark and like, man, I gotta be the only one going through this. And then when you meet people who know how you feel for once in your life, it's like the best thing ever, kind of, in a way. You know what I mean? It's unexplainable to me. Like the support that I get, and people, DM me, hey, I'm going through this too. And I'm glad I found your page. And I'm like, huh? Like, what do you mean? You know what I mean? Like, I know what you mean, but like, I wrap my head around it every day because, every day it's a new supporter. It's a new, relatable experience with a complete stranger. You know what I mean? And they can relate down to the T, like every detail. And that's a scary thing, but it's like, okay, I know this is for greater cause. So it's been, I'm just enjoying it. I'm really happy that, the community aspect of it can help all of us together. Cause, I'm not a selfish person. Like, I don't want to just help myself. Like, you know what I mean? So I'm glad that it's helping other people.
It's so cool. I see it. I went on your YouTube earlier, and there's over 1,000 subscribers, which is crazy awesome. Like, that's so cool that your videos are reaching that many people. And that's the love I think, the things I love to see is that kind of support. So I'm so glad that people are finding your stuff and they're able to share it and get something from it. So like I said, that sense of community is awesome. And as we get near the end of the podcast episode here, I always like to kind of dig into my guests and go, is there anything you want to know about me? And this could be like a podcast question, a personal question, anything that is randomly on your mind. I always want to give them an opportunity because, like I said, I want this to be a two-way conversation. So is there anything that you feel at this point you want to ask me?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever asked you this, but I always wanted to know, like, when was the turning point for you when you were like, okay, I'm gonna start a podcast? Like where were you at? Like, how did that even come about? And what made you actually like just press record, put something on Instagram, all of that stuff? Cause I think, if I remember correctly, you're just at about a year, right?
Yeah. So probably about like 9 months because they started in October.
Yeah, right.
So,
okay. Yeah.
Or maybe even less than 9 months. So like it was September, October time. And it's been crazy how quickly everything has happened on Instagram and following.
Right, that's what I'm saying. That's what made me think about that. Cause I remember when I first found your page, I'm like, oh shit, this dude has been doing this for a while. But then as you go through the content, you like, wait a minute, like you kind of started when I did type of thing. And I'm like, damn, like that's dope. Like he's really like the work is just out there. And I'm like, so how did that all come about? Like really?
I appreciate that question. In the last probably like year and a half, I have had some really hard looks at myself and mental health. 5 years ago was a big turning point when I thought about leaving this world, wound up in the ER, went to inpatient and everything like that. And I thought that was kind of like a pivotal turning point. But like I said, I didn't talk about it for a while. So one of the biggest things was last year, like last spring, it reached a point where my wife was realizing that some of my anxiety was coming back, like certain tendencies that I thought I had under control were popping back up, and I wasn't noticing them. I had pushed them away somewhere, and thankfully she had noticed something. So at that point is when she talked to me about like when to intensive outpatient, and that led me to go to partial hospitalization. While I was in partial hospitalization, it was a tough time for me because that was the first time I took off work for like an extended period of time. I didn't know how the world, like I've been keeping myself busy. I've been with my company for 10 years now, and I didn't know it was okay to take time off to do something like that. So that was a big wake up call to take time off to do something for my mental health. And that got me thinking like, okay, I am feeling better when I'm in these group settings and can talk to people about what's going on and hear their stories back to me. So I knew I wanted to have some sort of conversation. And I bounced ideas back, like, do I volunteer at a shelter or something like, or a center that does a lot of like mental health things? Do I write a book? What do I do? And it was kind of that situation mashed with the same point that my therapist said, I need you to start journaling things. Well, for me, journaling doesn't work. Like sitting down and writing, like I can do it. I can write a story or something like that. But like with my emotions, it wasn't doing anything. And I didn't know if I was journaling wrong or something like that. And it took a while to learn that there's no wrong way to do it. But my therapist had suggested doing like an audio journal, a voice journal of sorts. And so while that came in and I wanted to have conversations, it just felt like a normal like merge. Like, I wonder if I could podcast. And I had a lot of those thoughts like there's so many out there and the market's probably saturated and who's going to listen to my stuff? And then there was like, okay, I got past that and like, okay, well, if I tell my story, do I just stop it? Do I stop journaling and stuff like that? Or do I keep going? How do I keep going? And so I think it was just this beautiful marriage of timing with, I needed to get things out to voice journal and I needed to keep conversations happening because I recognized that's when I was in the best headspace. And that was kind of my mashed up word vomit answer of how I started the podcast. And I had this idea. I wanted to launch it on a certain day in October 10th. I think it was, I don't know if it was a mental health awareness, like international day. I'm trying to remember exactly, but I had this idea. I'm going to launch it October 10th. And all of that was fine and dandy, except I was putting so much energy into that, not understanding and realizing that I was getting married 5 days earlier, October 5th. So it was a big thing that I got so hyper focused on the podcast. Like, I want to do this. I want to do this. And I was not putting in as much presence and being in the moment with planning the wedding and enjoying being a newlywed. And so there was definitely some, like, I want everyone to know, I want to be open about it. There was some contention when I did start the podcast. Like, it didn't sit right between my wife and I. She wanted to, she was supportive of the idea. She loves me doing the podcast, but she wanted me to wait on it. And I was so driven and determined to launch it on this day that I was blind to everything else. And so I can say, like I said, I'm not upset that I started the podcast. I'm super glad. I love what I do. If I look back, there's definitely something I could have learned, and that is to make sure I'm present and not letting something that I'm so focused on blind me from what's going on in front of me. And I think that's a big message for anyone listening. Like, it's good to be excited and have goals and want to do it. At the same time, you got to learn how to ground yourself and be present. Both things can happen at the same time. It's not one or the other.
Mm-hmm. Man, that's dope, man. I don't know how we just like scrolled past that this entire time of us knowing each other, but I never knew that. That's crazy, bro. Like, you started that right in October. Like, damn, like your shit took off like really fast too. Like,
I was completely in shock. I remember my wife and I had gone to a hotel to hang out with some friends and go swimming and all that stuff. And I remember getting out of the hot tub and going and picking up my phone and seeing the 1,000 follower thing on Instagram. And it was like, did I break it or what did I do wrong? Like, how did I do this? And everyone's like, what's your secret? And I'm like, man, I don't know. I just started following people that I thought would be similar to what I want to look at and listen to. And it just kind of, you start this mutual friend thing almost where, okay, I follow this account who follows these 3 accounts, and it's a pay it forward thing. And so I was shocked by the support. I'm so thankful and appreciative and grateful for it. And it blows my mind every day. Getting those messages from people like you said that, hey, I found your stuff and it spoke to me. That's what keeps me going. That's the big reward here. I don't care if I get 10 million followers one day, but I just want those messages, that one message that says, man, I'm glad you're telling your story because this shit is real. Like I need that. So that's the real big thing for me.
Definitely, man. Well, you know, I tell you this all the time too, but congrats on the success, man. Congrats on, you know, actually starting the journey and just being consistent with it, man. I love your stuff. I love what you do, bro. And I'm really glad that I've able to meet people like you. Like, I'm glad we've been able to form this brotherhood type of thing. So it's, you know, cause I've always been a person who's very, you know, kind of, I shy away from community, even though I needed it and I always had it in a way from, you know, for many things. But I was just like, man, I'm scared to meet new people. You know what I mean? Like, cause of everything that's going on. But, you know, you made me feel like I'm appreciated for sure. And I definitely appreciate you as well, bro.
You are very, very appreciated. I can't say enough how much it's meant to me to be able to make this connection and talk to you. And it might seem so simple, just like a message here and there. Some days that's the biggest thing I need is I'll get a message or I'll send a message and you'll respond. And I can't put into words. Like it's so strange to me. Like this is a person I've never physically met. We connected randomly on Instagram, and
Right.
I can't picture like going forward without this brotherhood would not be something that I'd ever want to happen. So I'm very, very appreciative of you and thankful for you. I feel like, I mean, even our first time sitting down and talking for the podcast here, that hour flew by. I could talk to you for hours on end, man. And I'm so excited because I know that this will not be our last conversation. I know this will not be the last time that we collab on something. And so I'm highly appreciative of you. I want you to take a second and realize your success too. Like you're really getting that message out there, man. Like it's real shit that you're doing. And I can't stress this enough that you are doing good things for this world. The world is better because you exist in it. And I need you to know that and feel that. You are such an amazing person. And I can say that with my whole heart. And I need you to be nice to yourself whenever you can and see your own successes, see your victories. I know it's hard. I know it's really hard some days to see that shit, but you know, you wake up, you got out of bed, you ate a meal, or you took a shower. Those are your wins, and those can be your only win for the day. That doesn't mean your day was a failure or anything. So just nothing but kind love words from me to you. Like, appreciate you deep down. And I thank you once again for taking time to just sit down and be here with me.
Man, that means a lot to me, bro. Like, truly thank you, bro. Like, thank you for those words. Like, I really needed that this week. And man, it was just like, I was just going with the flow of everything. You know what I mean? So kind of, yeah, bro, I needed that for real. And I appreciate what you're doing. And I appreciate you being there for me, man. And this episode was amazing, bro. Like, this didn't even feel like an hour, like at all. So like, I'm already looking forward to the next time we sit down, because we can definitely carry a conversation and we can definitely talk about things from two different perspectives. So yeah, man, I'm super excited for what's to come, bro.
I appreciate it. And I'm very excited. Everyone listening, I need you to go over to Instagram, Talk with Tay Pod. That's Talk with TAYPOD. On YouTube, it's at Talk with Tay Podcast. There's a Patreon, Talk with Tay Podcast. Anything I'm missing between Instagram, YouTube, Patreon, where else can they find you, Tay?
Yeah, I'm on TikTok. Did you say YouTube? I'm on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, really anywhere there's a podcast. You can stream my episodes. I'm available on pretty much all platforms. So yeah, for visuals, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. That's really where most people go. But whatever is your preference, yeah, that's where you can find me at.
And I'm telling you, listeners, you're going to want to watch that video content because, man, if I can compliment it anymore, I will. That shit is crisp. It's good. It's raw. It's real. I love it, man. Maybe it's just the production person inside of me that's so happy. But yeah, definitely, guys, go check that out. While we decide whether or not my 13-year-old is going to take Tay's baseball advice later or not, this is Mikey going back on mute. Until next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thank y'all.
This episode of Mikey on Mute is brought to you by Little Jerk Society. Little Jerk Society is a clothing company fueled by the raw energy of creative rebellion, celebrating those who march to the beat of their own drum. They care deeply about mental health and believe in a world where everyone can thrive, regardless of their challenges. Use promo code Mikey on Mute to save 15% on your order at littlejerkclothing.com. Again, that's littlejerkclothing.com. And remember, use promo code Mikey on Mute, all one word, to save yourself 15%. Go off and make a change.